Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to episode number 8 of In and Around Pleasant Hill podcast with Alex Khodadad. In this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Sean Annan, and the title of this episode is Control Your Mind, Control Your Life. And as always, do me a favor and subscribe and let your friends know about my podcast. I hope to make this podcast an inspirational and an educational journey for all by interviewing local business owners and community leaders about their success story. Now, Sean Annan is not a local business owner. He's actually on the other side of the country. But me and him, we go back, what, about 4 years now, Sean?
I would say at least 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
So,
for sure.
we're both part of a coaching company as coaches, and me and him have clicked. I've seen him speak at various different events, and his story is very interesting, and he's a very successful real estate agent in New Jersey, correct?
New Jersey, man. Northern New Jersey, actually. Yeah.
Northern New Jersey. Okay, great. So why don't you dive in, my friend? Tell us a little about you. And, I love this topic, control your mind, control your life.
Yeah. It's been a fun journey for sure. And I appreciate you having me on here, man. I really do. So it's amazing to be on this side of the camera, right? Like usually I'm the one doing the interviews and stuff too, which is cool. But yeah, I'm super appreciative to be here, for you, for your audience, for your viewers, and any nuggets I could drop, man, I'm more than happy to help. But so a little bit about me. I'm a realtor in Northern New Jersey, and my journey as an entrepreneur began very young. So for me, just a little background about me. I was an only child for 18 years of my life. I grew up with a single mom, never knew my dad. And so, growing up, life was always interesting, right? Like I was probably one of the only kids in my school that really didn't have a dad or like know a dad. Like I played sports my whole life. So it was always my mom who's like on the sidelines, yelling, screaming with the cowbell, like blowing the whistle and all that other stuff. So it was interesting to me. Like I didn't think anything was any different, right? Like my mom showered me with love my entire life. Like there was no shortage of love. There was no shortage of toys. There was no shortage of, Jordans and all this other external stuff to like, I guess, at the time making up for my dad not being there, right? Like that was my mom's way to do that. And growing up as a kid, like it didn't even hit me. Didn't even think about that stuff. And so I grew up watching my mom work 3 jobs. She worked at State County Prosecutor's Office during the day. That was like her 9 to 5. At night, she worked at a photo place called United Photo in my town, which obviously, has since become obsolete. It's like a dinosaur. And she would waitress on the weekends. So I would barely see my mom. So she worked at prosecutors 9 to 5. She'd come home, 4:30, 5 o'clock, whatever, stay home for a half hour, 45 minutes, and then go right to work United Photo during the week. And on the weekends, she was working at this place in town called the Bethwood. And so, I'll never forget my grandmother. I grew up in a house with my grandmother, my uncle, my other uncle, my aunt, my grandfather. And my grandmother used to watch me while my mom would go to work. And I would literally lay on the 2 chairs at the kitchen table waiting for my mom. And my grandmother used to like make me count to 20, your mom will be here. And like I count, next thing I know, I fall asleep. I wake up and my mom is there. I'm like, oh my God, she knew. But it was like 2-3 hours later because I would just fall asleep. And so like that developed my hustle muscle, like the will to work and do whatever it takes to take care of people. And, again, never knowing my dad, not realizing the impact that would have on me later on in life. Like I felt like I always gravitated towards someone to be like a role model in place of where my dad was. So like I had my uncle Mike, he wound up, he's probably 15 years older than me, if that, let me see. So 18, so 3, yeah, he's probably about 15, 16 years older than me. And so when he was graduating high school, I remember him leaving to go to boot camp. Like he was like my dad. Like I remember kindergarten making him a Father's Day card. And, a couple of weeks later, he's going to boot camp in the Marine Corps as he graduates high school. And I'm like, oh my God, I need somebody else to like fill this void here of a father figure. And then, along the ways, like I would have role models like a Michael Jordan and, like a Jose Canseco, like all these people like in my life. And I'm like, all right. And along the way, they actually built the competitiveness to which I have in my life now. And so, fast forward, a dozen years or so, after my adolescent life here, I got into the real estate game. And right before the real estate game, thankfully, I've been in since I was young, like 22 years old, back in 2003. But my senior year in high school, I decided to start a landscape company. And so I was 17 years old. I got this old beat up pickup truck, and I got a bunch of equipment. And I'm like, what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to grow this big landscape company. We're going to, I'm going to crush it. And I saw these trucks driving around. My one uncle that I worked with since I was 12 as a landscaper, he kind of filled that role model void along the way. So I'm like, I'm going to take what Uncle Vinny does. I'm going to make it better. And so I started this landscape company when I was 17 years old. And from there, I didn't realize that I was actually kind of further developing or further flexing my hustle muscle as a kid. And fast forward a little bit, I had an opportunity to work with another mentor of mine who, became kind of the father figure in my life. And he's like, what? He's like, you should go get your real estate license. He's like, you'd be great in this business. And I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll go get it. And so I wound up going to real estate school, getting my real estate license. I was landscaping. I wound up selling my landscape business. Decided to go back to college after I dropped out of college out of high school. Actually, I didn't even drop it. I failed out because I never actually pulled out of my classes. I just failed them all. And so I wound up going back to college, sold my landscape business, started selling real estate. So I was going to college, going to real estate school. I was a foreman at somebody else's landscape company that I actually sold my company to 4 days a week. And then I started bartending on the weekends and waitering on the weekdays. And next thing you know, I'm like juggling all these things. I'm like, what am I even doing with myself? And again, further developing that hustle muscle, right? And fast forward a year, I'm like, what? Class is kind of getting in the way of showing homes and making these commissions. And I'm like, I'm gonna kind of just slide off and do real estate full time because I didn't need the college background for that. And here I am, almost 19 years later, at 40 years old, doing this full time and loving what I do. So.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. Listening to your story, our stories are somewhat alike. Being raised by a single mom and having mentors in our life. My father wasn't really in my life either much. He was overseas, but I mean, yeah, just always wanted to. I felt like I always had to prove to my dad, and he wasn't even here, and he's been dead for 4 years now, and I still feel like I got to constantly prove to him. And yeah, I mean, just listening to your story, there's just so much similarity there.
Yeah, and that's what I felt the same way, right? Like there was always that void, and I never knew my dad, never met my dad.
Yep.
It was always like maybe it's that sense of not having that person there that I have to prove myself,
Yep.
in some kind of which crazy way. But I was approached by my aunt, my dad's sister, probably about 10 years ago on social media, on Facebook. She sent me a message. She's actually my godmother. And she reached out to me and she's like, hey, I would love to meet you. I'd love to talk to you. You can meet your dad and blah, blah, blah. And I was just totally disinterested. I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to reply. So I didn't reply. And then she reached out again a few years back. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I'm not going to reply. I'll reply when I'm ready. And I was never ready, because I'm like, what does this spawn into in my life? Do I really need the change right now? And then last year, I'll never forget, March 19th, it was like right when the whole world was like shutting down. I get another message from my aunt and saying, hey, I just want to let you know that the message went something like, I know in the past I've reached out to you and maybe you were just ashamed because, we might go to your dad or tell your dad. She goes, but don't worry, that'll never happen now because he passed away.
Oh.
And I'm like, And like all these things start playing through my mind. And, I'm a dad of three kids.
Yep.
I got a 10-year-old, I got an 8-year-old, I got a little 3-year-old. And I'm like, have I been robbing them of their grandfather, right? Like now they're never going to know their grandfather. It was always on my terms, right? Like there was like a sense of control. And, I'm like, it's on my terms. I'll talk to them when I'm ready. And now I'll never have that opportunity, and,
Right.
and
Yep.
so I'll be honest with you, that one that one little event in my life has really shaped the way I think and have thought going forward since then. And I've been a
Yep.
huge mindset guy before that.
Yep.
Going forward from that point, and I don't think I've ever even shared this publicly, to be honest with you. So, but going forward from that point has definitely changed. Number one, what or how I give meaning to. And number two, if there's anything in my mind that I want to do, I just go and do it.
Right.
Right. And so that's been a huge, kind of a huge change in my mindset. Like instead of that whole ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, whatever, I break both of those open. And it's like, I'm just going to do what I want to do, what I feel is right.
And also the whole the COVID, I really think it was kind of like a big reset for a lot of us. As you get older, like you said, you've just turned 40, correct?
Just turned 40 2 months
You,
ago.
but as you get older, you look life differently. I just turned 50, right? And it's like I'm constantly just looking back and certain things, the decisions I made, I go, well, maybe I would have made some changes. I really don't have any regrets in my life. And but I mean, last year was kind of like just forgive and move on. It's like you just hold yourself back. So Sean, tell us, let's dive into this control your mind, control your life, because I've heard you speak. Now you talk about different things. You talk about time management, but you're a very successful real estate agent in North New Jersey, and you've done very well for yourself. So I know that you believe everything obviously starts with the mindset. So you want to kind of get into that and talk to us about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe everybody has their own definition of like what mindset is, right? And so to me, mindset is the way that we talk to ourselves inside of our head. And because the conversations that we have in our head ultimately direct the actions that we're going to take on our outside world, external world.
Right.
And so so many things begin with a thought, and pretty much everything begins with a thought.
Yeah.
And if you wake up and your thoughts start running your head, and your thoughts start going all over the place, right, with so much going on, like you talked about COVID, right, like you could look anywhere and find so much negativity, and our brains are only going to process what we focus on, right? It's
Right.
say like our brains are the best camera lens on the planet, right? But they just zoom in and focus the only thing only on what we look at.
That's right.
And so when we go to process this stuff, I start my mornings with gratitude. And that has been such a game changer in my life. And even going back to 2 years ago when I spoke on stage at our coaches advance, the whole gratitude speech, like that still holds true today in my life, because without it, again, we wake up, we go reach for our phone every single morning, and
Yep.
I promise you there's so much negativity out there that it's going to change the way you look at things. And so gratitude's a big part of mindset for me. Another thing also is whatever follows the words I am, right, is like super important, because that's another thing that like you tell yourself, like even in my head, like I am, and whatever the fill in the blank is, that's what you're going to continuously tell yourself that you are. I read as kind of cliche as it is, but a great Joel Osteen book, and it's called The Power of I Am.
Yeah.
And it's probably one of the best books that I've read. And actually, when I say read, I read it on Audible. So it's like the audio version. And, I would recommend definitely reading that book. It's super powerful. And again, whatever follows the words I am is really what you're going to be and how you're going to feel.
Now, when you wake up in the morning, so the first thing you do is gratitude. Like, you say
Yeah.
like, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my health, things like that. Correct?
So as soon as I wake up, before my feet even hit the floor, and
Okay.
I'm a huge coffee guy, and I'm a huge like pop up, get out of bed. First thing I
Right.
do is I kind of like I grab onto my own power, right? And I
Right.
take that energy.
Right.
5 things. I think of the first 5 things that pop up. Right. First 5 things that pop in my head. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be breathing. I'm grateful today is Tuesday. 3 more days till Friday. Like whatever you could potentially be grateful for. And then I go about my morning. Right. I get my coffee. I come back, I put myself in a deep sense of gratitude. And again, it's the hard thing to do is to not grab the phone. The hard thing to do is to not go check the
Exactly.
email. The hard thing to do
Absolutely.
is to the hard, it's and again, I find myself creeping too, right? Because not everybody's perfect 100% of the time. And I believe a huge part of that is actually being acceptant to that you're not going to be perfect 100% of the time.
All right.
Because if you set the expectation within your mindset that, hey, every day is going to be perfect, every day I'm going to be happy, every day I'm going to be in control of everything in my life, you are ultimately setting yourself up for failure because that is very unrealistic.
All right.
Um, However, you can be in charge of what you think and how you react to things. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
morning with gratitude can definitely help with that.
So now you said that you get up, you do five things that I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that, and then you go get your coffee. But then you said you come back again and go into deep gratitude again.
I do as I drink my coffee. Yeah.
So
Then I
what are you
focus
doing?
on
Are you closing your eyes? What are you saying? Are your eyes open? What are you doing?
usually they're closed.
Okay.
Usually they're closed. Sometimes I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes I'll even fall back asleep for like 5 minutes or so, or I get
Okay.
into that deep of a state of almost like a meditative state, where I'm just focusing on one to two things that I'm grateful for.
And but so
Right?
you're not doing because meditation, they tell you to, just focus on your breath. So obviously you're
It
more
begins. So it begins with focusing on my breath, right? And
okay.
I'm a big, the way I get myself into state in terms of meditation or my gratitude, it's, focus on the inhale, focus on the exhale, focus on the inhale, focus on the exhale. And then I actually reverse that
Okay.
because we're trained to think inhale, exhale. And then I take that and go, exhale, inhale, and that puts me in a trance.
Okay.
So
And then you go into more into deep, just saying the words gratitude again, correct?
yes, yep.
Okay. And how
Usually,
long?
it usually, I'm going to say more often than not revolves around my wife, my family, my children,
Okay.
and just being alive.
Absolutely. And how long is that? 5 minutes, 10 minutes,
Usually 20 minutes. Usually
20
20 minutes.
minutes. Wow. Okay. 20
Yep.
minutes. And
Yeah, I'm
then
already sober. I'll grab my coffee if I don't put myself into like super deep meditative state. I'll grab my coffee, I'll drink my coffee, and I'll just continue to think about what I'm thinking about.
now you're laying on the floor. Are you sitting in a
I'm on
chair?
my bed. No, I'm on my bed.
You're on your bed. You do it on.
I'm on my
Actually,
bed.
you know what's so funny, man? And same thing with me. Meditation. People say you need to sit. You need to sit at a chair or whatever. The best meditation I've ever done is actually laying on my bed. You know,
The best, honestly, man, the best meditation is the one that works for you.
it works for you.
100.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you, so I've done um, sensory deprivation tanks. They're like water tanks filled with tons of Epsom salt.
Right.
So like 250 pounds of Epsom salt, and like you just lay there and you float. And you want to talk about some crazy meditation sessions? Do that for 90 minutes, and you
Oh,
will.
and a tub, right? You said Epsom salt.
Yeah, so they actually have tanks. So I go to this place. It's called Cloud Aquatics, over here near me, and you guys definitely have them by you as well. You go in this tank, you shut the tank, you put like the like the earplugs in, and you literally lay in water. You don't hear anything at all. And it's 90 minutes, complete black, complete silence. You don't hear
Now, when
anything.
you say you're putting in plugs, are you listening to music or it just like
No, just like earplugs, man, so you don't get water in your ear.
okay? And then you're inside there, and then this is actually a place that you can go to, correct?
Yep,
Now,
absolutely.
can you also do this in your tub at the house? Pour it up, put some salt, and lay down in there.
That's a great question. I've never tried it, but I'm sure you could. I'd rather go to a place that has these things.
So, what is that place called again?
Cloud Aquatics over by me. There's a couple places, but the
Cloud
one that I go
Aquatics.
to is, yeah. Yep.
Interesting. And what does that do to you? It just relaxes your soul and your mind.
It does. It does. I'll tell you, the first few minutes, like you freaking out a little bit. You're like, oh my God, am I going to drown? Am I going to sink? Am I going to
Right.
hit the side? But it's complete sensory deprivation. You hear nothing. You hear
Right.
the silence in your own mind.
Right. Me and my wife, a couple of years ago, actually tomorrow's our anniversary, And few years ago, me and her, we went down to Calistoga. It's in Northern California, close to Napa Valley. We went there, and then they had these rooms. You go into these mud bath. Like you lay in a mud bath and you stay there for like 30 minutes and you come out. And we came out and they gave us a massage. I swear to God, I felt like a brand new human being. Uh,
Great, man.
I mean, talk about taking all the toxins and everything out. So by you doing these gratitude and all this, what has that done for you in your life? Like people want to know, okay, that's fine, you're doing all these things, but what are the and people are always interested about the result. Like, what has that done for you?
It's allowed me to realize that I am super effective in the calm. And so that was a very forced behavior for me years ago. I always strived, like I strive in chaos, right? Like I need the chaos around me and like, like give me the pressure and all, this is what I'll do, right? And so what that has allowed me to do is actually slow down. And so now when I slow down and I can actually hear what I have to say, like there's this inner voice, right? That very rarely when you're in such chaos and moving so fast, do you ever take the time to stop and listen to?
Yeah.
And so when you put yourself in those moments, in those states, now you hear this inner voice and you're like, wow, I can actually have a conversation with this person, this inner voice, right? Who happens to be you, who happens to be your mind, who happens to be the person on the inside that if you want to change anything on the outside, that's where it starts. So that has definitely allowed me to be okay with myself internally, which is definitely a struggle, especially in the business that we're in, right? Because it's so high strung, it's so high, it's high pressure, it's fast paced, and it's helpful to slow down, man. And like if you want to create a wonderful business, a wonderful life, you need the time to think about that.
Yeah.
So another thing that has been super helpful, not only just the gratitude, but also detaching meaning to a lot of stuff too. So this is something that a coach, my mindset coach, my transformation coach has really helped me with, is that everything that we attach a meaning to, we've attached that meaning to it by something we went through in the past. So by detaching meaning to things that we do or say or go through or that happen to us, any type of meaning that we give it is something that we're pulling in the past, right? And so by being able to detach the meaning, you start to not really worry so much about a result or an outcome or hold on to create resentment going forward with someone or something.
All right.
So
That's very interesting. Now, what about throughout your day, Sean? Let's say, you know how our business is, you're always putting out fire. Let's say you've done your gratitude in the morning, you're at the office, you're calm, you're relaxed, and boom, here comes a whirlwind, right? And now you got urgency after urgency, and you're trying to put out fires, right? Like, do you take a moment between all of this to calm yourself down? What, one of our good friends, he calls it biohacking. Like, do you do anything like that throughout the day?
I breathe.
Breathe.
Breathe, man. Yeah, so breath work is super key. Like I got this Apple Watch. This thing tells me when I should breathe, as crazy as it sounds. And it's just like it's a constant reminder. But at the end of the day, like when things are urgent and important, obviously you have to deal with them.
Yep.
But we don't deliver babies and we don't save lives. So if we don't tend to something right away, it's okay. Like it will likely get worked out.
Right.
Right. That doesn't mean give crappy service by any means. Right. Because at the end of the day, like we strive on customer service, we strive to do the right thing. And this is something that I know, there's a lot of people, like a lot of agents that I know that they're like, oh, I'm 24/7. I'm 24/7. I'm like, you could only be 24/7 so long before you burn out.
Absolutely.
Like, and so granted, when things arise and things are emergencies, like real emergencies and require, immediate attention, you have to deal with it. By all means, you have to deal with it. And that's we sign up knowing that could be the case.
That's right.
And if we don't like that, then there's no pressure to us to stay in this business. You can go do whatever you want to do, right?
And we're in the wrong business if we don't. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Correct. However, you always want to be in control of your time, right? But you don't want to give crappy service. If something is an emergency, right? Like most fires, I'd probably say that 80% of the fires, they're not really fires. They're
Exactly.
just smoke in the woods, right?
That's
It's
it.
not really fire.
Exactly.
So, I do think that um, actually having a schedule and being in control of your schedule helps to alleviate some of that stuff, right?
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, we prioritize what we do. And if you
Yep.
have a schedule, you have your time prioritized.
Yep.
And if something jumps into that, right, you're going to have to make a decision. Like, is what I'm doing more of a priority
Yep.
than handling this issue right now? Where
Yep.
most of the time it's usually another angry agent or an angry client
Yep.
that, I understand that I have to take care of that and I have to help that. However, I'm in the middle of doing this first. And usually by the time I get to that, as long as it's not something that's completely blowing up,
Right.
usually people have calmed down, emotions have
That's
settled
right.
a little bit,
That's
and it
right.
gets handled, right? Or by the time I get to it, it's already handled by somebody else.
Exactly. And I'm the same way too. I'm trying. One thing I've learned is to stop multitasking. Growing up, I always said multitasking. I don't do that anymore. I've tried to stop that as much as I can. And another thing, to react right away. Like I'll get an email. I'm like, oh my God. Now I'm like, just relax, wait 10, 15 minutes. And by the time I call or will respond, they say, oh, it's already been taken care of. So you're absolutely right to not respond right away. Now, Sean, what about you? Throughout your day, you pretty much finish your day. When you go home, do you do any more gratitude or meditation? Do you do anything else, or that's it? You're done.
So yeah, look, man, I should, and I like to bookend my days, right? There's a beginning and there's an end. So
Yep.
typically the next time I'll do that is when I'm going to bed, right?
Okay.
I'll do like a quick rundown of my day. What was I grateful for? What am I looking forward to tomorrow?
Okay.
And that's the way I wrap up my day. I don't get too deep into it. I'm a fairly easy sleeper, so usually once my head hits the pillow, I'm out.
Me too. So, Sean, is there anything else you'd like to cover before we go?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, it's not so much about controlling your mind and controlling your thoughts. And although that is the title, right? Like sometimes control seems like such like a negative connotation, but it's knowing that you can be in control of your mind and in control of your thoughts, right? So like you could take two people that grew up in the same exact circumstances, right? Like I saw some kind of thing on social media where you have two brothers that grew up with a dad that's an alcoholic. One of the brothers is an alcoholic, the other one is a successful attorney or whatever, right? But you could take the same situation and two different people, and two different people give it two completely different meanings.
Yep.
Right. And so that goes back to detach the meaning from it, because you're holding on to that meaning or giving that meaning to something from the past. And the key is to really just live in the present, right?
Yep.
Like I always say, like, it's cliche as the saying is, it is what it is. But when you're dealt with an issue in front of you, whether it's something like so extreme as like like a death or something, or whether it's something not so extreme where like you have an angry client, it is what it is, right? Compose yourself, think about how you want to react first, and then react, right?
Yep.
And so I have just found that being calmer, especially in my own mind, has made things a lot easier for me and for people around me. It's made me, in my opinion, I think it's made me more of an enjoyable person to be around, as opposed to this high-strung, chaotic, like move fast, 1,000,000 miles an hour. Not saying that there's anything wrong with that, because again, if it's working for you, do more of that.
Yep.
If not, change it. Which is also a core belief that I live by, right? Like there's no good, there's no bad. If it's working, do more. If not, scrap it and change it.
Yep.
So, but at the end of the day, like we are 100% in control, right?
Yep.
So
Sean, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, you want to give out your number or email address? They want to contact
yeah. So I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. First name is Sean, Shawn. Last name is Anen, Anen. You can find me on social, pretty much everywhere at Anen. My last name, Anen, real estate. Also, my number, 973-417-9806. Shoot me a text, shoot me a call. I'd love to talk to you. See, hopefully how this has impacted your life here a little bit. Yeah, I'm easy to find. Google me. I'm out there. I'm always ready to help people too. So
That's all. Or they can reach out to me and I'll get hold of you,
right,
or I'll
I'll
get
reach
your
out to Al.
information to them. There you go. So I want to thank you, Sean, for your time. I know you're busy right in the middle of the day. I know you're 3 hours ahead of me right now. So how's the weather down there? Is good?
It's actually, it's a little foggy, man. We've had a pretty rainy summer.
Really?
Yeah, so far it's been a little rainy. We call it down the shore when we go to the shore here. So
Yeah.
I was down the shore last week. I got some good colors, which I'm happy about, and
Good.
I have a date night tonight with my wife, which I'm looking
Well,
forward to.
yeah, that's awesome. So, well, thank you, Sean. I appreciate you. So, guys, do me a favor and watch our future episodes and make sure to listen in and subscribe and even share with someone you think that might benefit from my podcast. Again, Sean, I want to thank you very much and I wish the best for you, Sean.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I
Take
appreciate it.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, later.